COVID-19 is the biggest challenge of our lifetimes. The number of cases is set to rise sharply. We must do all we can to slow it down and save lives.
Hi, my name is Ali and I work in a call centre.
Hi, my name's Nicola and I'm a college student.
Hi, I'm Mia. I'm a 17-year-old student.
Hello, my name is Ben Cagle. I'm 19 years old and I'm from Ardrossan.
Hello, I am Ben Cotter. I am a musician and currently unemployed.
Hi, I'm Ira and I am a college student, and give me your questions.
I first heard about COVID-19 about late 2019. I mean, there was a massive buzz around the college, and then an even bigger buzz about it and lots of talk about it once it started entering the UK.
I mainly found myself comparing it to things such as the Ebola crisis, which happened a couple of years ago. I just thought it would maybe be like an illness where you would hear about it for a couple of weeks, they would find a cure and then it would be gone. However, that's obviously not the case, as it started to become more serious as more and more people were being diagnosed with COVID-19, and especially in Scotland. I remember more specifically I was going to do an acting audition in Kilmarnock for a theatre company, but the fact that one of Scotland's first cases was in Kilmarnock was it put me off a lot, so it did.
When the lockdown was first announced, I was at college that day and they all sent us home. Like, I kind of panicked because I wasn't sure what was going to happen with the world and that, and like obviously I was kind of worried about my studies and not being able to see anybody.
When lockdown was announced, I was kind of anticipating it. I knew that there was going to be an announcement, and from everything leading up to it, we'd seen other countries go into lockdown. So I was kind of anticipating it, at least something like lockdown. I did think that it would be a couple of weeks tops. I didn't think it would be as serious as it was.
I was studying H&C music at Ayr College. I was taking in many community projects through Pride the Place, such as filmmaking, graphics design, songwriting, music industry. I was preparing for a gig that was for my H&C music, and I remember the lockdown was announced pretty much a week, not even a week, like a few days before the actual gig. And the whole thing was there was a massive part of our unit, so that had to be cancelled. And I was really annoyed about that because we had prepared a lot for it. We had practiced, we had organised set lists, we had everything organised for it, and for that to just be cancelled so soon before it was actually meant to start was quite annoying.
So when it was announced, the lockdown, I was still at work and college had been called off and all kind of shows and stuff with the band had been cancelled. So work was the only kind of normality that was still kept for me. When we first heard about it, we were at college and we were told that this was like the last day we would be in for like the initial 3-week period. So the only time I can kind of remember like us hearing about it was like leaving campus that day.
I really didn't expect it to like be for as long. Like, I thought that it was just going to be a short thing. I think everybody really did at that time. Like, we weren't obviously aware of how like bad it was.
I think just like everyone else, like I thought it was gonna be gone maybe in like a month or so. So I wasn't all too worried about it. And it was the first thing that we've heard of like a pandemic. So obviously the starting point is just like carefree. Like this isn't gonna be big, you know, like yeah, we'll stay in for like what, a month or so, and I already do that anyway. Like the majority of like my whole life I just stayed at home anyway and played video games, so it wasn't gonna be like too big of a deal.
My expectation for the lockdown was probably like most people's, like a few weeks, maybe a couple more to be safe. I wasn't too bothered by the thought of it at first. It just seemed like a wee break.
So the first 3 weeks, the shifts that I had at work got like increased because everyone was panic buying at that stage. So we needed like all the staff members to be in. So I was working like 4 or 5 days a week. So the days that I was off, it was just like relaxing, and the weather was like somewhat decent. So it was just kind of kicking about the house. There wasn't really anything else we could do.
For the first 3 weeks of lockdown, I was still like continuing my studies for fashion, so it was a graded unit. So we had quite a lot of reports and essays and designing to do. So I kind of pretty much like engrossed myself in that work to then take away from the fact like that it was like lockdown.
A little like overwhelming. Obviously, I stayed in, and that was what we were supposed to do. And yeah, the first like 3 weeks, I was at college, obviously. So the fact that like immediately I couldn't go and everything was going to be online.
This was something that we were going into that we had no idea what the outcome would be. Obviously, we were getting told all these new rules, like we weren't to leave the house, like we could only leave the house if it was to go for like essential shopping. We're only allowed to leave the house if we were allowed to exercise. So obviously it's really scary to just think about the fact that you're confined to nothing but like literally the 4 walls in your house. So you are like, you're not allowed to leave that space without permission, basically. But like you weren't able to like go meet your pals in like a park, you weren't allowed to go meet your pals at the pub, you weren't allowed to do anything. Like life as we knew it, it was changed like for the worse, I would say.
I found like the restrictions really hard because I didn't get to see any of my family or anything like that, or any of my friends. I couldn't go anywhere. Like, and it took a while to get used to being in the house all the time, because before lockdown I was here, there and everywhere. I had like all these different projects that I was involved with, and I had my studies, so I was like running up to air and back down from air, and I was like all like at practice studios with like the bands that I was in. So it was quite a shock for me to try and get used to all these like new restrictions and being told to like stay in the one place for like a long time.
I realised that the lockdown wasn't going to be 3 weeks after the first couple of extensions. It just kind of sank in a bit more each day, like this is what we're going to be doing, this is how it's going to go. And the more the lockdown was extended, the more that feeling just sank in.
When I first went on furlough, I think, because I worked all through March and all through April, and then I took May off for furlough, so it's probably like May time that I realised it wasn't like actually like this kind of initial 3 week thing that had been said, and that was one of the reasons we took the furlough. But then when we came back at the end of May and it was still going, probably then as well, knowing that this wasn't just something that we could take like a month or 2 off work for.
I was applying for college around the same time, so I was looking at monologues, I was looking for like things that I could possibly do like when I go to college. So for example, I was looking at the various plays, different acting techniques and stuff that could be handy for when I was meant to start college, which was meant to be in August. So I was really focusing a lot on basically the future. I was focusing a lot on how after all this was over, what would be useful.
I stayed motivated during the lockdown by just trying to keep myself busy. I had to find stuff to do, which couldn't just be Xbox. So I tried setting myself goals on the guitar. I tried to set goals for my keyboard. I just tried to like learn just new songs. I played games with my friends as well, and I think that was probably a massive help. Just keep myself up and going. Even just to get up, play some games with friends online, probably got me through lockdown a lot more than I realised.
I was watching a lot of like anime, I love documentaries. There was this one that I like binged called Keep Your Hands Off Aizuken, or Keep Your Hands Off the Film Club, and it was so funny, and it was so like lighthearted, and I loved watching it, and I kept like rewatching it during quarantine. There was also Tiger King, like I said before, and like the documentaries. Some of them were like political, like documentaries, and some were like about viruses, because of COVID, I was just like interested in them. So I was like, let me check, let me know, let me be in the know of these things.
Like if I got into anything, it was definitely Disney Plus. Like I cannot thank Disney Plus for enough for curing this lockdown boredom. And apart from like that, I was very much into watching YouTube, because on YouTube I have access to cast recordings of different musicals. So for example, there's an MTV recording of Legally Blonde on there, or like there's the NBC like professional recordings of like Grease Live and stuff. So it was really nice to be able to like have live theatre in front of me, and in a time when live theatre isn't allowed to happen.
I think one of the positives I took from it is to appreciate things more. I think as a society we took things for granted before lockdown and before the pandemic, but I definitely appreciate my family and friends and opportunities way more.
I did take advantage of the free time that we did have. Initially, I started to learn how to kind of cook a wee bit more. Nothing overly adventurous, but kind of more basic stuff that I thought I could have learned. And I also wrote an album near the kind of summer months of it. I used the time that I was off, because when we went back after furlough, everyone's hours were cut down because they had realised that they could like manage with less staff members. So everyone that had took the time off, their hours had just got like cut so much shorter than originally were. So I was in the house a lot more, which was fine, because as I said, like I was just writing songs and stuff.
I was feeling a little sad because this was like summertime was supposed to be me and Ben going to Edinburgh to watch this musical called Heathers, and we've been anticipating it like for a while. Like, it was back in like November 2019 that I bought the tickets, and so obviously like we had this planned for a long time, and then summer came in. COVID didn't, like, the restrictions didn't let up, and so we couldn't go, and it was postponed. It was very upsetting because we had this plan, and it did not work out.
The first time I hung out with my friends outside, it felt surreal, but just getting out, I think it definitely made me realise how much I missed, even though I didn't realise it at the time. Getting out, I started to getting out for the first time, I came out of my shell. I became a lot more extroverted than before lockdown.
It was really weird because I remember meeting up with one of my friends, and it was just strange because like we couldn't give each other a hug or anything like that either. It was just a really weird feeling, but it was good to see them as well, with obviously not being able to see them for so long. Like, there's only so much a Zoom call or a phone call or texting can do. Like, it's always better to see a person in person.
When the new restrictions were put in place, kind of October time, I think it was kind of, we saw it was coming, but I think it was still somewhat like kind of disbelievable, because we'd had that kind of taste of freedom, or whatever you'd want to call it. Like, so a lot of people didn't really think it was much of an issue. And I think how kind of slowly it was eased into as well was, really like folk weren't really taking it seriously at first, I don't think. I know I wasn't really as much as possibly should have been. But I think it was, I think folk didn't really take it as serious as the first one.
we would sometimes have a walk that would be like far apart, which is weird, but like it was alright. Like, it's a little upsetting to not be close to your friends, I guess, and like just walk about and not really go anywhere.
With people in different tiers, it was a very interesting perspective to see the fact that I was typically in a tier 3 zone, but where I worked was a tier 4. It wasn't too much different, but the differences were noticeable and were interesting for me, considering I didn't have to live basically like I was in a lockdown. I had some freedoms in comparison to where I was working, which was completely locked down.
So it didn't really affect too much being in different tiers with other people, because as I said, like, I wasn't really going out too much with people, and you know, the people that I was seeing was at college when the tier systems wasn't, you know, it didn't matter because everyone was going to the campus anyway. So whether it was, you know, tier 3 or tier 4, you still had to go to campus for our class at least. So I was still seeing the same people regardless, even though that they actually were in a higher tier than us at the time. The only thing was, like, multiple times kind of hanging out with people or having like days out planned, and then that kind of not being able to happen anymore because of travel restrictions. That was probably the only thing that was affected by it.
Christmas and New Year were really different in 2020. It was just, normally it's family things and we would be going out and just celebrating, and that didn't really happen.
Christmas and New Year was very odd due to like COVID-19, and I think that it was our second year without my dad as he had passed away. So not being able to have that get into that new kind of Christmas dynamic without our dad, we also had the dynamic of not being able to see family properly, which just made Christmas and New Year just feel like any other day, which is not what you want. You want to be able to have fun, you want to be able to meet friends and that. It was definitely a tad bit rubbish.
I didn't get to see everyone from my family during Christmas. Very different and nothing that I ever could have expected from this year. The fact that something people always kind of say that Christmas is a magical time and a wonderful time and a time where everything's very happy, became very dull and was not. It didn't have that magic that it always does. The kind of Christmas magic you get with spending with your family.
That was the best news I think I had heard in a long time, because that meant that, like, obviously when people get vaccinated, things might be able to like get back to possibly like normal, like what we are used to. And it also meant that like once like family members that are obviously in the bracket of being like vulnerable, like my gran and that means that they'll be safer as well.
When I heard that the vaccine had been developed and it was being distributed out, I think that was kind of like the light at the end of the tunnel, you know, like that was, right, we have this end goal which is ready, you know, or, you know, it's not as long, because obviously before that it was kind of just oh well, you know, it's happening, but when, whereas now there was some sort of date, even if we kind of all knew that it probably wouldn't actually all pan out to the exact dates that were given, we knew roughly that stuff could go back to some amount of normal because of this.
I absolutely, completely thought that we were going to go into another lockdown, simply because from what I was seeing online, we've seen the numbers rising, with seeing how things were happening and the way the world was turning out. For this to be happening was something that I expected to happen, and was actually kind of thankful it did happen, because in my own opinion, lockdowns do work in regards to this virus and beating it. and reducing the numbers of people that are getting infected and reducing the amount of people going to hospital.
I definitely suspected that there was going to be more restrictions. I didn't know how harsh they were going to be, and on the 3rd of January I'd already had suspicions, but it wasn't great. It was just another thing to knock me down, especially at the end of the year. I think it was really difficult for a lot of people.
On January 3rd, I didn't expect to be back in another lockdown. I definitely expected to still have restrictions in place, but to just kind of go back again, I wasn't really expecting that, and as most people, it was kind of, again, really disheartening to see.
I thought that we were going to be back to normal, but we aren't. I want my life back. I don't want to be in the house anymore. Like, usually I love being in my house, but now I'm kind of sick and fed up of it. I just want to go and do stuff, and I want to go see people, and I want to, I don't know, can't wait for gigs to open back up again, and so I can go run around mosh pits. That's what I wish 2021 would look like, but it's not like that yet.